Today, we're going to be talking about GitHub code reviews. So our team has been using GitHub code reviews for our open source project, and we found some issues which make GitHub code reviews, let's say, less than ideal for a fast-moving, mature organization. So let's just jump into those issues. But before we that, let's just review how we set up the GitHub code review process and what specifically we're talking about here. So we're talking about a branch protection rule, specifically that we have to review code before it goes into a branch, typically your main branch. So GitHub provides documentation how to set it up, but in summary, you go to settings, and then under branches, you could say add branch rule set. You'd give it a name, enable it if you want to enable it right now, and then you can add a target branch. You can also add a pattern. If specific branches meet that pattern, you can have the rule set for them. And then we want to go down here, require a pull request before merging. So the developer would open a pull request, and then we would have an approval, at least one approval. We would want to reapprove it when new commits are pushed. And we'd want to use code owners, which I'll cover a little later. And then, of course, we definitely want to make sure the push is reviewed by someone other than the person who pushed it, right? So this is kind of your standard config. These three checkboxes. Okay, so let's get into the fun stuff, the issues. Okay, so first, the code owners that GitHub provides is, let's just say, not scalable, right? We cannot use it with a large number of developers. So about code owners, so in the documentations, basically a code owner defines which files or directories are owned by individuals or by teams, and those individuals or those one person in that team must review the code before it's merged. The problem is that the settings in code owners kind of favors fine-grained ownership, right? Specifically, just looking at documentation, it says the last matching pattern takes the most precedence. So in this example down here, let's say the apps directory is owned by Octocat, but then the apps GitHub directory is owned by someone else. So that means if you make a change to this apps GitHub directory and you make a change to, apps/boza directory, both Octocat and Octocat will have to review this. And this is where the scalability problem comes into play. As the team grows, as you have more directories, as your project grows, you're going to have more code owners. So if you're making a change, a refactoring change, or a change that touches multiple files, you may end up with a lot of required reviewers. And then, so you go into the PR review process, and then let's say one code owner requests a change. You make that change, and then everyone else has to reapprove again. And you can have multiple cycles of reapprovals. And so this makes the code review process frustrating, right? It'll lead to longer PR turnaround times, slower development velocity, and potentially missed commitments because just PRs just take so long to get into the main code base. So what can we do about this? Well, from a developer experience perspective, what I would like to see as a developer is if I make a PR, I just want to have one code reviewer, right? I want to just have one person to go to and interact with. I don't want to ping pong between multiple reviewers, potentially multiple teams, etc. So one thing we can do is if we're stuck with using the code owners file, we could simply add Octocat onto this line so that Octocat owns this GitHub directory, right? So we're saying if a change was made to this GitHub directory and another directory, then just the Octocat has to review it. Effectively, we're kind of reversing this pattern the last matching pattern by always including kind of the parent review or the default review of the directory in the finer grain options. Of course, manually, it's kind of cumbersome to do that, but a developer can write a script to make sure this code owner's files follows that format. Okay, now let's go into the next issue. So the next issue is reapprovals for every push. And specifically, we're talking about this rule here, this checkbox, dismiss stale pull request approvals when a new commits are pushed. And there's no way to kind of add fine-grained options here. So that's part of the issue. There's just one checkbox. You can't really configure it. All right, so what issues do we have here? Well, back to multiple code owners. If we have multiple code owners, then if a new push is done, every code owner must reapprove this change. So even if the code that you own didn't change, you still have to reapprove the review, which seems like a waste of time and effort. And even if you have a single code owner, you still run into some cases where you must approve things that are trivial or irrelevant. For example, if a developer fixes a typo in a comment, you have to approve it. Well, currently it's easier for a developer to say, well, there's a typo, but I don't want to go through this rigmarole of approval, so I'll just leave the typo, leave the code base in the worst state just because I don't want to have this extra seemingly useless review cycle, right? Another thing that could happen is the reviewer can make a specific code change suggestion, right? There's a way to make a specific code change suggestion, and the code owner can simply accept it, but the reviewer still has to review that. And then you've got cases like auto-generated files, such as documentation or mock tests, things like that, which really, in many cases, should not be reviewed, and in some cases may even have automated checks in your CI, continuous integration, that make sure those files are generated properly. Now, what I'd like to be able to do as a reviewer, if I'm reviewing another developer's code, and that developer is a senior developer, I don't have to hold their hand every step of the way, is I want to say, okay, here's some minor suggestions, and go ahead and make those changes and just merge. I do not want to come back and review your changes, right? Because I trust you. I want to have trust in the developers I'm working with. And that's really where the counter argument comes in, is the trust part of it. That's right. So we're adding all these processes, these extra review rules for security, right? We don't want to merge potentially malicious code. But I would say if that's the case, then we really need to kind of separate kind of the functional code review process, where we're trying to move as quickly as possible, from the security review process, right? A security review looking for malicious code can be done by someone else rather than the code owner. It can even be helped by automated tools, including many AI tools that are coming out nowadays. Okay, let's move on to issue number 3. And issue number 3 is that it is impractical to maintain a protected feature branch. So let me go ahead and draw a picture to demonstrate what I'm talking about when I'm talking about feature branch, right? So you have your main branch that you're gonna ship from, and then you create a feature branch and you make it a protected feature branch. And multiple people are going to be working on this feature branch, main feature. So the way the developers are going to be working on this is they're going to create their own branch. They're going to make some change, and then they're going to make a pull request back to the feature branch. And this pull request is going to be approved by someone. So if every developer does this, right? If every developer does this, I'm assuming there's multiple people working on this. Then at the end, when this feature branch is ready to merge, we do not need an additional review, or at least an additional explicit review, right? We don't need a review because every commit into the feature branch has been reviewed already, right? So this branch is deemed safe to merge back to main. And we've been using this pattern occasionally in our development process. But the issue is ideally we will want this feature branch to be protected, right? In order to make sure to honestly say that it's safe to do this merge up here, we need to make sure that every commit has been reviewed. And in order to make sure every commit has been reviewed, then we need to use the branch protection rule. Okay, so what is the issue? So the issue is, what if you want to keep the feature branch up to date, right? What if you want to merge the changes from main? Well, we've got this branch protection rule. So this merge has to be reviewed, but this review is complete nonsense because like all the changes that have went in have already been reviewed. So reviewing this again, complete waste of time, right? So this really is the main issue, this merging. We can't keep our free feature branch up to date with main and have it itself be a protected branch. Of course, you've got the other issues, right? There's a lot of changes coming in, potentially changing a bunch of stuff. So this kind of aggravates the whole too many code owners issue that kind of we mentioned in point 1, right? All right, so just to summarize, so we've got 3 issues, right? Code owners currently is not scalable, how it's presented. Second issue is reapprovals for every push are frequently just busy work, frustrating busy work. And thirdly, we can't really have a protected feature branch. So what is the real solution to these issues, right? The real solution is to have your own custom code review process, right? And we're an open source project, we're on GitHub, so we would want to have some kind of open source process to manage code reviews, right? We can't just go to a big organization and grab what they're doing exactly, grab their code, right? So so one way to do this is to have a custom GitHub action to manage code reviews, right? The PR would come in, the workflow would run, it would identify who needs to review the code, right? What one individual or a group of reviewers, each of whom could approve this PR, right? The workflow could exclude specific files and directories from the review process. And then it would kind of maintain the state of approval to kind of handle specific corner cases like generated files and excluded files and things like this. And of course, we would want to fix it so that we can actually use effectively use a protected feature branch. So in a future video, we'll talk about how to create this custom GitHub action to manage code reviews. That's it for today.